Well, I'm delighted to be with you tonight, and I'm delighted to be in this magnificent building that means a very great deal to me because it's related to the actions that we took in 1988. This is part and parcel of the larger Redress settlement. And I'm just honored to be in your company tonight because of the good things that this has brought to the Japanese Canadian community and to Canada after we were able to deal with a major bad thing that had happened to the Japanese community and to Canada. Those of us privileged enough to have served as Prime Minister tend in later years to reflect on the achievements and disappointments of our time in office. Some observers may think that we're preoccupied with great legacy issues only and how they will be viewed by history. In my case, that would include the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, the Canada-US Acid Rain Treaty, elimination of the manufacturer's sales tax and the introduction of the GST, but that was Michael Wilson's idea. I fought it as bitterly, almost as bitterly as Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, until they decided they loved it. But my mother said, give credit where credit is due. I got to tell you, Michael, this was Michael's GST. Participation in the Gulf War, Meech Lake Accord, and the creation of the Sommet de la Francophonie, and of course, the leadership of the Commonwealth in the fight against apartheid and for the liberation of Nelson Mandela. But as I get older, I particularly savor those decisions and actions that only a Prime Minister can initiate and that have had lasting and beneficial effects on an individual, a family, or a group of people. Not questions of earth-shattering importance, perhaps, or those that stand out dramatically in the great sweep of history, but actions that made my decision to enter public life so very worthwhile because of the lives they touched so directly. Within hours of entering the House of Commons as Leader of the Opposition in September 1983, 25 years ago, I was confronted with the explosive and historically vexing question of minority rights in Manitoba. Many journalists wrote that the issue on language rights there was thrown out by the government of the day in an attempt to divide the party under my leadership, giving rise subsequently to the opportunity to declare that if I couldn't unite the caucus on this issue, how could I expect to unite the country on a larger issue? I dealt with the issue in a special debate in the following words while bringing my party to unanimous support of the parliamentary resolution. And one shouldn't quote oneself, but I will. This resolution compels us to remember our overriding commitments in this country of almost limitless space, overflowing with great opportunities for the future. These commitments comprise a respect for our linguistic and other minorities, a long-held desire to encourage their flowering, and the duty to protect our minorities wherever they are. The issue before us, I continued, is also one of simple justice. There is no painless way to proceed. There is no blame to be apportioned. There are no motives to be impugned. There is only the sanctity of minority rights. There is no obligation more compelling and no duty more irresistible in Canada than to ensure that our minorities, linguistic and otherwise, live at all times in conditions of fairness and justice. Those final words were my bedrock beliefs from my earliest days on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River in Baie-Comeau, Quebec, and the inspiration for my stand on individual and minority rights from my early days throughout this time in office until this very day. I appointed the Royal Commission on Nazi war criminals residing in Canada because I felt that it would be unworthy of Canadians to share their magnificent citizenship with someone associated with such an ignoble cause. I intervened to ensure justice for David Milgaard and his family. I acted on behalf of Italian Canadians and led the Commonwealth against apartheid and for the liberation of Nelson Mandela. And I acted to bring justice, long denied justice, to the Japanese Canadian community for the damage done to them illegally during World War II. On June 29th, 1984, Pierre Trudeau entered the House of Commons for the last time as Prime Minister. I rose as Leader of the Opposition and invited him to act to remove the stain on our national character owing to the abusive and illegal treatment Canada had meted out years earlier to our fellow Canadians of Japanese ancestry. On this, I said, in his final day, would the Prime Minister grasp the moment to right a historic wrong that has been inflicted? Will the Prime Minister on this special day take time to convey, either on behalf of the government or the Parliament of Canada, a formal apology to Japanese Canadian citizens whose rights were trampled upon during the war? I would think it would be a gesture that would sit well with all Canadians who believe so fundamentally in the sanctity of minority rights. Unquote. I then took my seat to await the Prime Minister's answer. Instead of taking the opportunity to soothe the quiet pain of thousands of our fellow citizens, the Prime Minister spoke to me across the floor of the House of Commons by saying this, quote, "Why does Mr. Mulroney not apologize for what happened to Riel? Why does he not apologize for what happened during the Second World War to mothers and fathers of people sitting in this House who went to concentration camps? I know some of them, Mr. Speaker. They were not Japanese Canadians. They were Canadians of Italian or German origins, or some old French Canadians who went to jail, who went to concentration camps during the Second World War. Why do we not apologize to them? Why suddenly only the Japanese, Mr. Speaker? Is it because there's no votes in it for you? Yes, come on. Is it because there are no votes in Manitoba for his party? Is it because there are no votes in all of the other groups? I do not think it is the purpose of a government to write the past. I cannot rewrite history." Unquote. And the Prime Minister sat down. I have to admit, quite frankly, that I felt no anger against Mr. Trudeau that day for his insensitive response, only a great deal of sadness. To heal, to build a better nation involves passion and concern, not just sterile, unfeeling reason. At that moment, when he sat down, I resolved to act on behalf of the Japanese Canadian community. If and when I became Prime Minister of Canada, that was a promise to myself, a promise to Canada, and I did.